Welcome to the Period Besties Podcast with Stasha and Katie. Think about it as chatting with your best friends about all the TMI stuff you've never talked about before with two period coaches who've been helping hormones collectively for over 20 years now. I'm Stasha.
And I'm Katie, and we're pulling back the curtain on what it's like in the world of menstrual coaching. From puberty to menopause and everything in between, we're here to show you how period coaching can save the day. We'll share practical tips and information you can put to immediate use to improve your hormones and happiness.
We're removing the mystery, ending the taboo, and shining a light on just how powerful period coaching can be.
So whether you need period coaching or are considering becoming a period coach yourself, these episodes are going to help you. We'll share stories, coach live on air, and bring smart, savvy guests to share their wisdom too. Let's start today's episode.
I am so excited to introduce our guest today. Our guest speaker is Tiffany Saruda, who is a business in flow coach. She really helps people get their back-end businesses set up and systems put together, but she does it all with her cycle and her client's cycle. And I think this is going to be really illuminating for my business owners, VAs, assistants, people who have their own businesses, especially online, or work supporting people who have online businesses. So I'm really excited to dive in with her today. I loved how just grounded and calming everything she had to say was. I know when you're in those first stages of business, you're feeling really frantic and crazy, and there's a to-do list a bazillion miles long. So having somebody in your corner who has that just very grounded vibe, so reassuring.
Oh my God. That was the number one thing I kept coming back to during our whole interview was like, I'm feeling calm listening to her. And usually when people talk about strategy and process and technology, it feels overwhelming because you're like shiny object syndrome. I need this, I need that. But the way that she's very calm and grounded and just really walking through how she's working with clients and having them just get started, right? Like she was sharing how she was a website designer for 2 years before she had her own website. You can start a business and you can be in corporate, right? You can do these things with flow and being more strategic, more grounded, and more creative, more focused, more productive. So I just loved her energy. I feel like anybody that just wants some calming energy should just listen to this podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah. I felt like that was one of my biggest takeaways was that when you're using your cycle, you can have that calm spaciousness, the schedule, the plan, everything has room in it. It feels easier. It feels doable. And having her just reiterate how that when she gets her clients working with their cycles, when she's working with her cycle, that's how it feels. Having a business felt good, room, spacious, productive, things were getting done well, done correctly, done the first time, instead of that harried, constantly fixing things, putting out fires, dealing with drama, all that last minute stuff. So I that was probably one of my favorite takeaways from the conversation.
I loved it. For everybody listening, let's dive in, and we're excited for you to meet Tiffany.
Welcome back to the Period Bestie Podcast. Today we have the lovely Tiffany, who is going to be really fascinating. So this whole week or month, we've been talking about business and flow, right? And Katie and I have been giving you our tips and our behind the scenes and little bits out of the new book and everything. And today we get to talk to somebody who quite literally is the expert in business with flow. I will let Tiffany introduce and talk about everything that she's doing, but I just want to say that I am super stoked to have her here. And I'm also a little bit of like proud mama bear. She is one of my period coaching school graduates. So we're very excited to have her here and sharing with us all of her wisdom. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I can't wait. This is going to be much fun. So in honor of the business and flow aspect, where's everyone in their cycles? I'll go first. I'm in luteal. I'm day 22. So I'm right on the cusp of falling into the deep luteal zone, but I'm still feeling good. So hopefully I got another couple of days.
I am day 13, but I already ovulated this month. I ovulated early, which is funny, ironically, because I didn't ovulate last month at all. So I think that the pattern that I'm seeing is longer cycle, shorter cycle, longer cycle, shorter cycle. So I'm definitely in a shorter cycle. So my brain should be feeling kind of like good right now, but my energy is definitely low today. So I think that we're going to see how the rest of the cycle manages out. But also, we've had company the past 3 weeks. So I think that might be playing more into it. But usually I'm like psyched and energized during ovulation time because I just ovulated 2 days ago. But I'm feeling feel deep luteal, even though I'm not there.
I am day 10, but for me, late follicular is my peak energy because kind of like Katie was saying, ovulation drains energy for me. I'm great verbally. I got all those skills, but the energy is just not there to maintain that until my little second wind in luteal. So follicular tends to be like my go phase, which isn't typical, but I like knowing that about myself, even though it's not necessarily what I talk about everywhere, because ovulation for most women is that go phase. Knowing, okay, day 10, I have like 5 more days of peak energy. And then I'll have 3 days of my brain is on fire, but my energy is low.
I so feel that. I feel similarly a lot of times during ovulation. I feel real like too much is going on in my brain. And it's okay. Maybe I get very tangential and ranty. Like, oh, but then that made me think of this, made me think of that. And then somehow we're 12 miles off track on the other. Yeah, I get it. So why don't you tell us who you are and what you do? Kick us off. Let the audience get to know you a bit.
So I am a period coach. Thanks, Stasha. I started out as a web designer. So I still do some web design work for clients. And then I do a lot of tech integrations with clients because technology and automation can really support that cycle. My favorite automation is calendars because we tend to blur our boundaries. But if you can link your calendar to your cycle, you could just be like, oh, I don't have availability. They don't need to know why you don't have availability. And then I also work with clients on figuring out their cycles because a lot of them come in and they're like, I just want to burn down my business. And my very first question is, where are you at in your cycle? And a lot of them can tell me, oh, my period is X days away, but they don't really understand their cycles. So getting them into that, getting them to really understand how productivity works, because we say productivity, but do we mean time management? Do we mean energy management? Do we mean focus? Where are you struggling with that? Because some people struggle with all of it, and some people struggle with specific energy management or time management. So helping them really understand that and helping them understand technology to help with that, how technology can allow you to take that step back when you need to. So it's a little bit all over the place, but it makes me happy because no single day looks the same.
I love that all things together. And Stasha and I have been talking a lot because we've been going through each phase of the cycle and what it means to your business, whether you own your own business or work in corporate. And we keep talking about burning the business down and our history of being like, oh, wait, well, where am I in my cycle? Oh, okay, just give me a few days and then I'll feel better again. So that leads me to question, was there something going on in your own life, your own cycle that inspired you to integrate this work? Because it's so unique in the sense of when you went to period coaching school, it's definitely becoming more and more talked about, right? But website design and period coaching, right? Like, what was that catalyst what was going on in your life that might have sparked this? Because it's so interesting that we are all doing similar work, but we all have different histories on why.
Looking back, I can actually see leaving DC. So 2016, I left DC. I was a paralegal. So completely multiple shifts there. And I can see now that burnout played a big part in that. And then moving down to southeastern North Carolina, very different, slower. Life is just runs at a different pace. And then I went into web design, and typical of someone who's never run a business, you compete on price down to bottom basement. So I was undercharging clients. I mean, I think my first couple of websites, I charged $500 for, like, one of them was a photographer, a massive website that I charged $500 for. And that's not sustainable. So that led to burnout and stepping back, getting a contract with a local business, doing marketing for them, and then realizing, okay, I really do want my own business. Came back in the tech strategy space and was like, there's still something not clicking. Stasha had been on the periphery of where I was hanging out online. And when she opened up Period Coaching School in 2022, the round in 2022 was the class that I joined. I was like, I think this is because I had seen a couple of people come out of it, and what they were talking about was like, no one's really talking to web designers. No one's really talking about how tech, or at least not the people that I was following. And I was like, okay, this is, I think, where there's a need for it. I'm in a mastermind with web designers, and one of their biggest challenges is burnout. How do I keep this going without burning out? And joined Period Coaching School, and I actually started having those conversations while I was still a student. And I think the biggest light bulb moment is that question of, where are you at in your cycle? And understanding how the hormones impact how you're feeling about your business, how you're feeling in general. A lot of them would come in and we would complain about, oh, my to-do list is 17 miles long and I can't focus on a single thing. It's like, okay, where are you at in your cycle? Where can you give yourself grace? So joining Period Coaching School was, I want to say, inevitable, because once I started hearing from Stasha how much that has an impact on me, I was able to avoid the burnout in that second iteration and incorporate it really into what I do.
I've heard that a number of times, myself included, right? I burned out with the first round of my own coaching business. And then, yeah, I certainly heard that from other students as well. Like, I burnt out trying to do this and I don't want to do it again. And I think this is the path to running my business successfully and avoiding the burnout and the overwhelm and all of that stuff that drags you down. I love the observation, right? You noticed a hole in the needs of people out there and was like, I'm going to serve that group of people that are being ignored or don't even know that it exists. I love the observation skills to see that space in the market and then go, I'm going to fill that gap.
The needs of a service provider are very different than the needs of someone who's running a coaching business or the needs of someone who's running a course-based business, because they're the way that you set up your schedules, the way that you're working with clients, it's very, very different. And there is a little bit more flexibility when you're a service provider, but making sure that as a web designer, there's a lot of elements that go into creating a website. You have those creative elements, you have those logical elements, and you're not working in a vacuum. A lot of times you're working with a copywriter, you're working with a graphic designer, you're working with the client, you're acting as a project manager.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how do you, just to step back and keep it in the personal space, because we want to talk about how you work with clients and stuff down the line, but before we get there, how do you integrate your cycle into your business so that you are avoiding that burnout and overwhelm?
The very first thing I did was put my cycle on my calendar. Being able to see where I'm at any given time when I'm trying to schedule something, or, 6 months down the road, what am I doing? Not always an exact science, but it is so helpful to be able to look at it and say, yeah, no, I'm going to be in deep luteal. There's no way that I'm going to be able to participate in a live panel for your summit. I can do a presentation because I can record that whenever. But so having that on my calendar and then just being aware, like when things shift. And I really think that the awareness for me was like the biggest shift in how I set up my business, but also recognizing that when a client asks me to do a newsletter setup, I need to pay attention to where I'm at, because I'm not going to be able to do some of that techie stuff. I'm not going to be able to help you edit your funnel because I'm not there. That's not where my brain is. I'm going to push it off, and I don't want to disappoint you by being late in the deliverable. So making sure that when I have deliverables for a client, that they fit in where I'm at in my cycle, not where they're going to be. Coaching, when I'm talking with someone, checking to make sure that the conversation we're having meshes both sides of their cycle, my cycle, and giving myself space, knowing, okay, luteal, I can have conversations, but I'm not going to book more than 1 or 2 clients a day, because that's just going to drain my energy way too much. That comes back to that energy management, knowing how much energy I have and how much energy each activity takes. For me, creating a graphic in Canva takes little to nothing. I can do that no matter where I'm at. For me, it's actually a great deep luteal phase, get my graphics done, because it doesn't take a lot of brain power. It doesn't take a lot of focus. Even if I'm starting something from scratch, I'm not working off a template. It's fun for me. It engages my brain in a way that doesn't matter. It's not high stakes. I'm not going to do something high stakes in that phase. So I think that awareness was really the biggest incorporation into how I do things.
I love that. And just to clarify, when you say putting your cycle on a calendar, you're not saying I'm just marking the day I get my period. You're talking, I'm putting the phases every day, all month long, all cycle long on there. So I know, all right, on this day, I'll be probably in follicular. I'm very likely going to be ovulating here. Because I think,
it's not just my period.
yeah, that's where I really wanted to be clear. Because I think a lot of people go, oh yeah, I put my period on my calendar. But we're talking mapping out the whole shebang and knowing what phase you're going to be in, or at least close estimate, right? And then you can always confirm at ovulation if you're on track or not, which is what I do, because I'm also in that perimenopause stage where ovulation was a little late for me this month. So we'll see how it goes. I had a terrible cold and folliculars, but then I could push things back a little bit, going, okay, I ovulated a few days late, so I'm probably going to be in deep luteal a few days later than normal. XYZ.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that I check in on monthly. I'm like, okay, do I need to shift where I'm projecting my period, where I'm projecting deep luteal? Do I need to shift that stuff? Yeah. So it's a constantly moving calendar. Mm-hmm. And obviously some things get added to it that can't be moved. But when I see those things on there, I know, okay, I need to block off the rest of the day. I'm not going to be able to do that and this.
Yeah.
And I think that has been the biggest shift, even as far as like from when I started tracking, charting more than just my period. Originally, it was like, oh, this is static. This doesn't change. And then I was like, no, everything shifts every month, a day or two, one way or the other. But also knowing like ovulation, okay, did this happen early? Did this happen late? Am I right on time? But like you said, you were sick during follicular. I love the fact that because once I started tracking body temperature, I can tell when I'm under the weather. And I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't going to work. This is reschedulable. I'm going to push it. Even before my body is telling me that I'm sick.
Oh, 100%. It's so amazing that we have that information that we can gather and help us plan and map out and really, really take extra care of ourselves, especially as business owners. Like when you go down, right? We want to be able to prevent as much as we can. Obviously, we all get sick, but just having that knowledge is so amazing. What do you think the impact has been on your business and your personal life by mapping it out? What have you noticed the most change by integrating this into your life and into your calendar?
I think one of the biggest things is that I don't hit the bottom of my energy. Because for me, energy management is my biggest challenge. So being able to see on the calendar where I'm at in my cycle, knowing, okay, this energy level is not quite as high. So I can't do something that requires this many spoons. I don't know if you guys have talked about spoon theory related to chronic illness. It's in, okay, this is where I'm at in my cycle. So like I said, ovulation isn't a peak energy time. It's a peak brain time, but it's not peak energy. I may only have 75 out of 100 spoons for ovulation. So I need to be a little bit more discerning on where I'm spending those spoons. And knowing, okay, I'm not going to hit rock bottom where it takes me an entire cycle to get back to being able to have 100 spoons for follicular. So that I think has been the biggest, it's burnout. I've prevented myself from going into burnout. It also helps with the overwhelm. I know not to have a 17-mile long to-do list. I can start out with that and then I prioritize it and break it down. And each month I'm like, okay, these are the things I need to do. And then each week I'm like, okay, this is where I'm at. These are the things that are going to work with my cycle, with my energy levels. Because even knowing, okay, creating a funnel for a client is 75 spoons. In follicular. In deep luteal, it's the full 100 spoons. It's 115 spoons if I'm being honest. So knowing that, okay, my cycle impacts how many spoons an activity takes too, helps with preventing that burnout and helps prevent overwhelm. I don't feel overwhelmed by my to-do list when I look at it and it only has 2 or 3 things. Follicular, I can put 6 or 7 things on the list and still feel like I'm going to accomplish them all.
I just love that. I think that's so important for everyone that's listening to really figure out your energy and your output so that with the spoon theory, right? If that really makes sense for everyone that's listening or something else, right? But I feel like burnout is the number one thing that we talk so much about, especially as women business owners, because we have modeled our businesses for so long after traditional business models versus what we're talking about today, really working with our cycle. But I love that you plan out longer. I guess my question is, do you talk to your clients about this, or is this just the back end that you're doing? Do you acknowledge this when you're working with them or only when you're working with your period coaching? I'm just curious, like if they also know what you're doing on the back end.
It has to be both. I don't think that there's a way that I could run my business without my clients knowing where I'm at in my cycle. Because even if I'm not working with them specifically on period coaching, I bring it to everything that I do. If I'm doing a done for you back end setup, they need to know that, okay, I'm scheduling it for this time and I can't rush that because I'm not going to be able to deliver the product that you need without giving myself this time. If it's a multi-step project, yeah, we'll have check-ins. I'll keep you up to date, but don't expect the deliverable to be pushed up a week or 2. There's a reason for the timeline that I'm giving you. And also talking to them, if they still have a cycle, okay, you're doing your own copywriting. So I want to make sure that the timeline incorporates the time where you're going to be at your peak to create the copy. I don't want you to feel rushed and unhappy with what you've delivered to me because you're not going to be happy with the final result if you're not happy with the bits and pieces that come before it.
That's so genius.
Right? Yes, genius. And just listening to that, I'm like, God, I can't tell you how many times I worked with somebody and then everything was delayed and it gets frustrating, right? Okay, no problem. That's fine. But had somebody just said, look, I will be in the peak deliverable phase on this week, 3 weeks from now, I'd have been like, amazing, great. Because having those expectations and deadlines and everything that are far more reliable and knowing it is, to me as a business owner, I can plan. I can make that. Okay, great. I know that's that. Then I can plan and I can make things work and okay, well, I'll bump this forward and we'll do that first. And then we'll do that. Like you can move things around and you can adjust. But when you're like, oh, I'll have that to you next week. And then, oh, sorry, it was just not, we couldn't get it all put together. It's going to take another week or two. And then, next week, it's like, oh, we're working on it. It's just, we're having a little bit of difficulty here. It would have been nice to have just been like, look, it'll be here on this date, So that to me sounds really soothing as somebody who's gotten burned a lot.
It was a hard learned lesson. I realized that part of, those early days of the web design business, you want to say, yeah, great. I can create a website for you in a month. Because technically, yes, I can create a website for you. It takes me less than a day to build out a website.
Yeah.
But there's all these other little moving pieces that need to come together in order for me to create it that quickly. And I need that stuff. And it needs to be the perfect time of my cycle for me to be able to sit at the computer for 8 hours and knock out a website. And that you get a couple of days. There's a very short window where that actually works. So a website is an example of, you need graphics. Am I creating the graphics? Am I creating the brand for you? Do you have a brand? Because that's going to extend the cycle, because I need time to be in that visually oriented space to help you create a cohesive brand, to help you create graphics that are on brand with that. And then taking that to the next level of actually designing a website. The copy. I'm not a copywriter, so I don't offer my clients copy at all. You either have to deliver it to me or you have to work with a copywriter. And I think so many times, I know early in my business, when someone came to me and said, I want a website, my assumption was, you want it tomorrow. Mm-hmm. So I would want to compress that timeline as much as possible. Learning the lesson of, just because you're coming to me now doesn't mean that you want it tomorrow. I need to ask that question of, when do you want this? And then looking at my calendar and being like, okay, that fits within what I can offer you, or saying I'm not the right fit. And saying I'm not the right fit was one of the hardest things to say when you're like, I want the money. Yeah. I need the money. But recognizing there's people out there that are the right fit and that are willing to not burn you out so that you can create what they need.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of the things that I think you're calling such clear attention to. When we as business owners are using our cycles and planning and doing the quarterly plans and those kinds of things, then I don't need a website tomorrow. I need a website in 6 months. I have something like 6 websites live out there in the world right now, working on another one. But all of them, I was like, okay, I need this. And, the very first one obviously was a little more, let's get this going. But after that, I was like, I want this website, but I want it to be done well. I want it to look good. I want the copy to be finessed. I really want it to be a good site, knowing that's going to take months to make the graphics, to do the copy, to finesse, to finagle, to work with the website designer, to do all that stuff, knowing that. And then me as the business owner, planning with my cycle, doing my copywriting in my follicular phase, doing my graphic and brand stuff in luteal, and moving that all forward. And then when everyone I've worked with has been just, thank you, because you're like the only person coming to me, not going, I need this tomorrow. You have a very clear month to month. Okay, let's have the structure this month. Let's do these things. As a business owner, when you're not putting the pressure on your vendors or coaches or techs or whoever you're working with, and you're working cyclically, it can be a pleasurable experience for everybody. Every VA I've had has just been like, thank you so much. Because they're working with other people, and their other people are not doing this. They're not working with flow. And the VAs that I've had have almost all, except for one who went to do a completely different business. She wasn't a VA. I talked her into doing it for me because she was just so good. But everyone was really good at doing that, and then took that to their other clients because they were getting frustrated at the constant catch up and putting out fires that they had to do for their other clients. And so they started taking the systems I had implemented behind the scenes for us and putting them into place for their other clients, and forcing their other clients to figure out their cycles and their planning and moving that forward so that they weren't putting out fires all the time. They weren't constantly delivering a website in 3 days or less or any of that kind of crazy stuff, and had a much lower stress level, a much lower cortisol spikes. Their symptoms improved, their cycles improved, their clients, running those other businesses, that their cycles improved, their businesses improved. They weren't scrambling so much. And you could see that ripple effect just from, I'm going to teach this VA how to work cyclically together. And my first one was before period coaching school. So it was really using the business program and going, I need you to watch your business, your flow as part of your onboarding. And then we'll talk about actually working things to back end. And like our Slack isn't in a meeting, on a call. Our Slack is the 5 phases of the cycle. So your status changes to where you are in your cycle. And then I could see, oh, all right, Sarah's going into deep luteal. Sarah has PCOS and endometriosis. Sarah is done. At this point, any note I have for Sarah will go into my personal Slack, and I will send it later when I see her flip out of menstrual and into follicular. And then I will bombard her, but she will be emotionally and mentally prepared for bombardment in follicular.
Yeah. I also find that clients are a lot more satisfied with the end product.
Yes. Right?
Because it's not rushed.
Back and forth and
It's-
glitches and
Building
So
trust.
yeah, there is a lot more trust in that process. They're more satisfied with what they're producing to me. They're more satisfied with what's the final delivery. And while it may seem like the timeline is stretched out really long, it really takes about the same amount of time. There's just less frustration because it's not what they're envisioning.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I love that so much. I'm just like nodding to everything that you say. I'm curious, as someone that's gone through period coaching school, is that what you use the most, or other things that you learned that you bring into your business that you learned by being a graduate and going through the program?
I feel like a lot of the period coaching school program was for my own education. I do bring a lot of the business side of it. And when I'm talking about planning and productivity, I walk people through the basics of what a cycle looks like, because so many of us don't know.
Mm-hmm.
There is no education on what is happening within your body once you start having a menstrual cycle. You're taught, oh, you have a period now. Good for you. You can now get pregnant. They don't tell you that you can only get pregnant in this very teeny tiny window. It's just now you can get pregnant. They don't talk about how you can influence your hormones by making sure that you're eating right. They don't talk about how exercise can impact your hormones and that you might not have the energy to do a marathon just before your period. They don't talk about any of that. It's just there's that expectation of showing up the same way every day. For me, there's that education aspect when I do summits, when I'm meeting with a client for the first time. When I run a webinar, I talk about what are those phases and how whatever it is that I'm talking about is influenced by those, but I don't really use the medical side of it. And there's a lot of that education. It's made it easier for me to explain things to clients. It really is that business and flow section of the period coaching school that captured my attention and was like, yes, that's what I need to be doing. That's what I need to be implementing. That's what I need to be educating clients on. And then I do have some clients that are postmenopausal, so they don't have a cycle anymore. So I work with them on, okay, here's the moon phases. Let's start there, but we're still going to track your energy just like I do with any of my other clients to figure out what's your most productive way of doing things. Because a lot of my clients come to me, they're overwhelmed and they're burnt out. they're ready to burn their businesses down. So sometimes that first step is the planning and productivity side of things. And then we're going to talk about the technology side of things. Because, okay, now that you've simplified your business, because a lot of them come in and their businesses are just all over the place, let's simplify that. Let's simplify your to-do list. What can technology take off your to-do list? You're still booking clients manually? All right, we're gonna hook you into a booking system. You're stressed because you don't have the income to support using a third-party landing page, but you have a website. Okay, we're gonna build your funnel using your website. We're gonna switch you from this $200 a month email marketing to a much lower cost that does the same thing. You don't need an all-in-one right now. You're not doing courses. You're a service provider. You don't need all of that. So let's reduce the stress. That money is a huge stressor for a lot of the clients that come to me. So let's reduce the stress of those financials by looking at what is an actual reasonable budget. Let's create a tech stack that fits those core needs. And it's really weird to me how everything really all comes together, because if I know what your plans and your goals are, I can take that and help you build technology to support that. But sometimes you don't know what your goals are or how to be productive in attaining those goals. So we need to take a step back and do some goal planning. We need to take a step back and look at, okay, what does actual productivity look like for you? And changing the mindset of productivity is not over the course of a day or a week, it's over the course of a cycle. You need to look at whatever that cycle is for you. Is it 28 days? Okay, we're going to look at 28 days. Is it 30 days? We're going to look at 30 days. And we're going to adjust that mindset of, I need to do the same thing every day because that's what this dude told me to do. Because it doesn't work like that for us.
Yeah, even post menopause, right? You don't default back to guy. So yeah, even post menopause, that's a really good point. So that sounds very much like when you're meeting with a client, you're going, all right, let me tick off these boxes. And if something is not ticked, like goals, for example, or the tech stack is not working or something like that, then you dig into that space. Yeah, I love it. That's fantastic. And then just talking to them about, okay, so then the expectations and deliverables are going to go along with my cycle. And then the things I need from you are going to go along with your cycle.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah. And there is sometimes where it's like, oh, I don't really need the text. I don't need you to do the tech stuff. I just need support in the goal setting, the accountability. And those are more of the coaching clients that I have that, I don't do a lot of done for you work for them, but it is the accountability of, hey, just checking in. Where are you at in your cycle? How are you feeling? How are you doing on those action steps that we talked about for reaching your goals? Are there any challenges there? And is there anything I can do to support you with that? And sometimes it's just them on Voxer getting a little ranty about one of their clients and just giving them space for that so that they don't take it back to their client. And sometimes it's, okay, let's turn that rant into an email to let your client know why you're struggling and where there might be a miscommunication or what feels like a miscommunication between you and your client. And we're going to save that template. We're not going to send it right away. We're going to get another set of eyes on it. But sometimes just for them to put those feelings into sharing it with me in a Voxer message, typing out the email to the client. And then sometimes it's taking that email, editing it down to something that allows their client to know, okay, you're pushing my boundaries. Mm-hmm. And one of the things for me as cycle syncing, you need to know those boundaries. You need to be able to hold those boundaries. Yes, you might be a little bit more flexible with your boundaries in follicular ovulation. But when you get into deep luteal and you don't have the energy, you need to hold your boundaries. And you need to let clients know, I'm holding this as a boundary.
So smart. And I think something that's so hard for us as business owners, especially as women, it's tough to say no or to say that can't happen, or right, to hold those boundaries for yourself as a business owner. As you said, it's hard. And then you get into those phases of the cycle where you really start to affect your own health by letting people trample those boundaries. And you are letting them do that. So are you using that problem solving system in order to prevent it from happening again, to make changes, to have an email template this is what I use when someone's stepping over a boundary, and I just change what that thing is depending on the person and what's happening? And is it in the contract? Is it laid out? If not, it's time to put that line in the contract or amend things. I think that's really smart. And that's part of the cycle, right? That's built in problem solving system in the cycle can really help make that easier on you so you can enforce those boundaries, so you can take care of yourself. And actually, that leads me to one of our questions about self-care. What's your daily self-care non-negotiable so that you're holding those boundaries and taking care of yourself properly?
So I am not a morning person. My work day does not start till 10 a.m. I give myself, it's going to sound kind of funny, an hour in bed every morning. Like I wake up, I don't look at the phone. I'm literally awake, just laying there. But I need that time for me to fully wake up, to engage my brain. I'm not actively meditating, but it's meditative. And it's allowing me that space for whatever the day may bring. We talked a little bit before that I volunteer at the local sea turtle hospital. I call it my turtle time. It is actually, for me, self-care, for me to care for something outside of myself. And that is a non-negotiable. So clients know I have a boundary. I don't talk to anybody on Saturdays. So making sure that I eat right. I am one to skip breakfast and lunch. I don't get those hunger cues. I use an app. I use Finch. I don't know if either of you guys have heard of it. It's a self-care app and it has reminders and you check it off and you have a little burb. It's like a gamified self-care mental health app. And it reminds me to eat breakfast. It reminds me to eat lunch. And my list actually says, did you eat breakfast? Coffee is not breakfast. So just things like that. And that isn't necessarily cycle synced, but there are certain things that like happen across, I get credit for getting up and brushing my teeth. I get credit for getting up and washing my face. And that has really helped me hone in on what are the important self-care elements. We have this amazing porch swing that anybody who follows me on social media has seen because I spend time out there. I will take my computer and work out there, but there is just something about changing up where I'm working that helps reduce that stress of the clients sometimes. And it's just being outside, making sure that's one of the things that I check off on my Finch. Did I step outside today? Because that doesn't always happen. So it's just, again, comes back to awareness of what are the things that are going to help me and make me happy, and giving more time and space for some of those things in the later stages of my cycle where it might not be so easy for me to do those things.
I'm going to have to check this app out. I'm similar. I have lunch on my calendar every day because that's the hardest meal for me. Breakfast, I wake up, I'm hungry. I need to eat. But lunch, I am always in the middle of something and then it pops up. I'm like, okay, Katie, it's time to eat. You can't be productive if you're hangry. We don't want to be hangry. So I love that. And I love the porch swing too. I mean, just like what I like about what you're saying, it's like those small things that you're doing throughout the day that really impact your energy. We've been talking about energy today and reducing burnout. And I think sometimes people feel like they need to take a month vacation to prevent burnout, right? Versus the small things that make such a big, big impact. And this is something that I learned the hard way many times, which I think a lot of our listeners probably have as well. So I love that. And I feel like when you take care of yourself, you ooze that out and other people notice that. And then they also want to take care of themselves more, especially your clients, right? I think that's so, so, so important. My question to you is, before we wrap up, how do people know when they should hire you? Is it they're running a business and they want to be more in flow? Is it the website? Like, where do you see that?
I think it's the one, a lot of them come to me, they're overwhelmed and they're on that cusp of burnout. So they know that something's not working. Sometimes it's they have that shiny object, they want all the tech because they think that technology is going to solve the problem, and it doesn't. So they have this huge tech stack that they're not using because it didn't solve the issue. So a website is great, and I do websites, but I feel like more of what I do is in the tech strategy, planning, productivity space, because they come to me, they're like, I have all these tools and I don't know how to use them. And I'm like, well, let's figure out why you have all these tools, because it's that self-diagnosis of I need technology to solve this problem, and it's not the technology. It's stepping back and they're not working with their body. So they're feeling burnt out and frustrated and they ready to burn it all down.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to take a step back and start working in flow so that we can figure out where the actual needs for technology are. And then a lot of times the very first thing I work with clients on is simplifying that tech stack to just those core needs so that we can add as needed, but by taking it back to those core needs, website or not, booking systems, email marketing platforms, social media scheduling apps, bringing it back to those core needs helps them see, okay, it wasn't the technology.
Mm-hmm.
I was diagnosing the wrong problem. I need to reevaluate my schedule. I need to look at where I'm working with clients, how I'm working with clients. It's not the project management system that is making me feel overwhelmed. It's where I'm at in my cycle. And because of where I'm at in my cycle, that to-do list of 10 things feels overwhelming. Even though last week, that 20-item to-do list felt fine. So it's that sweet spot of I'm feeling overwhelmed and I've tried diagnosing it and I've purchased all this technology. I'm using all of these things and it's just not working. That's where people tend to come to me. I'd love to get them before they've invested in the technology, but that's typically where I find people. They're coming to me asking about the technology and I'm like, let's re-diagnose this problem.
So book a session with you before you start buying all of the tech bells and whistles.
Yes.
Love it. I have one question for you before we wrap up and get into the lightning round questions. But you are somebody who graduated from period coaching school and you started a business that integrates periods. Is there a piece of advice that you would give somebody who wants to start their own period coaching business in whatever manifestation or form it takes?
One, go into the school before you think you're ready. You don't need to have it mapped out. When I started period coaching school, I did not know how it was going to integrate into my business. I couldn't foresee how it was going to integrate. So definitely before you are ready, if you're feeling that calling, if you are thinking there are people out there in my circle who need this, do it.
Love it. Love it.
I would love to hear, so you can share with everybody how people can find you, what your free gift is to get your genius. I really just loved hearing how working with flow helps you stay sane and calm. And I think that's one of the things that's really missing when we're talking about business, is that everybody thinks it has to be this frenetic energy all the time. And when you work with flow, as you've been explaining, you can reduce burnout, you can feel more calm, more productive. And what comes in with that space is creativity. When you're not like jumping all over the place all the time, your brain can actually think and be creative, which is what we're always trying to do as business owners. But if we're not mapping that out, it becomes really hard to create that space. So I just love this really gentle, calming, scientific approach, honestly.
Right. You can find me, tiffanymariestudio.com is my website, which is not complete. It's just really pretty much a landing page and an about me page. And I'm cool with that. Social media, Tiffany Marie Studio on Instagram and Facebook. And I do have a freebie. It's Phases in Flow. And it is to help you figure out that energy of tasks and where you're at in your cycle so that you can better project when you should be doing things. And when they pop up, how much energy you need to allocate to those tasks so that you can create space around those tasks that might require a little bit more energy and create space for that creativity.
Genius. I love it. I'm a little envious I didn't think of it myself, but I'll be sharing it with everyone, and it will be in the show notes. And we'll have all of the information, all the links and everything in the show notes as well, including to that free gift, which I love, is genius. I think it's fantastic. I think we might even need to put it in one of the period coaching school little helper graduate created section, because I think that's great. And I think a lot of the students would love it as well. So the new incoming students, right, could benefit from it as well. So anyway, I have a lot of ideas to help you promote this out in the world. I love it. I wanted to see it everywhere. All right. So we're going to dive into the lightning round. This is going to be, the instinct, first thing that pops into your head is the right answer kind of situation. What is the number one self-care thing you do when you find those stress levels bubbling up?
On the ground.
Oh, I like it.
What's your favorite book?
I don't have one. I read too much to have a favorite book.
It's such a hard question for readers. What's one thing you can't live without?
My tracking book.
What's your favorite snack?
It depends on where I'm at in my cycle. Currently, carrot sticks.
What is your guilty pleasure?
90s TV shows.
Wait, which one? Do you have like a one?
I go between like Law and Order, West Wing, those political, like gritty. And it's tough because watching some of them now, I'm like, we haven't changed much. We're 30 odd years down the road, and what they're talking about on the TV show is the same issues we're experiencing now. So, but yeah, those tend to be the ones that I go back to.
I can't hear the theme song of Law and Order without getting panicked. If you could live anywhere in the world, money didn't matter, where would you live?
Wherever my family was.
Nice. Do you have a favorite season?
Late spring.
Do you have a favorite food and a food that you really don't like?
I don't like avocados. It's a texture thing. Favorite food would probably be a toss-up between carrots and sweet potatoes.
Oh, yeah. I just made a giant batch of sweet potato pudding last night. What's your favorite movie?
I don't know. I read books. I don't watch movies. And when I do watch a movie, it's typically based on a book, and the book was better.
Always. The book is always better.
Yeah. Agreed.
Is there a hobby or something that you are into that a lot of people might not know about?
I feel like a lot of people know that I'm into sea turtles. But that is probably the hobby that takes up the most amount of my time, and I would never give it up.
Nice. Best concert you've ever been to?
Going to sound really weird, but going back to my very first concert, which was Blues Traveler at the Roseland Ballroom in New York.
Yes. What a great venue too.
Yeah. All right. Last question. What's your ideal weekend?
Turtle time, followed by a weekend on the porch swing with a good book.
I'm coming over.
Magical. I know. I'm like, that's magic. I'll be there. I'll drive up.
Don't worry.
We loved chatting with you today. I feel like I learned a lot. I planned, but I am really encouraged and motivated to plan a little bit more. It's been a little challenging with the perimenopause, but it just sounds like you have a really calming energy with all the systems, right? There's so many systems going on. So thank you so much for sharing and diving into it and sharing your experience with working with Stasha as well with Period Coaching School. So thank you so much for being here. And for everyone listening, we can't wait to see you next time. Thanks for joining. Bye for now.
A big shout out and thank you to our sponsors for today's episode, Period Coaching School and Katie Bresek Wellness.
Thanks to you, our favorite bestie, for listening to the Period Besties Podcast, where no topic is TMI. And of course, share this episode with your besties.
Remember to leave us a 5-star review, nothing less than the best for us besties, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
You can follow us on Instagram at Stasha Washburn and at Katie Bresek, or email us at periodbestiespodcast@gmail.com.
Check out more about us at katiebresek.com and periodcoachingschool.com. And of course, check the show notes for free goodies and extras that support this episode.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Bye for now, besties.